Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here. Brandon, thank you for having me come out. I have to say, every host jurisdiction does a fantastic job of the hospitality, and staying here at the JW Marriott, I mean, the only problem that I'm going to have with it is that the towels and the linens are so thick and luxurious, it's going to make it very hard for me to close my suitcase when I check out. So look, I've had a long history with Penwar. And, you know, as Brendan said, as a minister, as an MLA, as a private sector person, as a, you know, as a diplomat, but the kind of relationships that Shane's talked about are long-lasting. And I don't know if there's anybody that was here at Penwar back in '93, but I met people. Is Barry Penner here? Barry might be Barry's way back there, and you know, he'd be one of the long-standing guys that I got to know through Penwar, and you know, we did a lot of good work together. So my job here is to welcome His Excellency Pete Hoekstra, the U.S. Ambassador to Canada. We've gotten to know each other quite well over the last little while. It's been kind of a traveling roadshow that we've been doing, Ambassador. I've been moderating you in Arizona, in Calgary. Last week we were in Vancouver, which is where I messed up my knee, but that's a different story. But Pete Hoekstra has been an amazing person to talk to and to work with. And I think that he has a genuine love of Canada and has a deep love of the relationship and has a lot to say about it between Canada and the United States. And so it's my honor to welcome him, and I ask all of you to welcome Pete Hoekstra as a man who has served as member of Congress for Michigan's 2nd District for 18 years between 1993 and 2011. He's been the former U.S. Ambassador to the Netherlands. He most recently served as the chair of the GOP in the Michigan election most recently. And Ambassador, great to see you. Thanks for coming.
What is this?
It's a cane.
I mean, we've done. Is this a new tool to keep me in line, or what?
Well, you know, I mean,
I just saw you last week, and you were fine.
I know, I was fine. It's look, it's. Did you have some opening comments that you wanted to make? Or are we going to get right into it?
We're going to get right into it. I want to talk about, maybe not what you want to talk about, but what these folks want to talk about.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea. Well, first of all, let me tell you, I mean, this is your first Penwar event, right?
No.
Oh, you've been before?
Yeah, 1993.
No, really?
No. I got invited last year, and must be the same timing, right?
Similar, yeah.
Yeah. So I hadn't been in Canada very long and got the invite to go to Bellevue, Washington, and thought, oh, that sounds like a good group to go to. And that's before I knew that you were associated with it. So I had the privilege of joining the group a year ago.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I had such a successful and good experience when they invited me to come back, even though I was in Alberta and Vancouver not that long ago for about 10 days. It's kind of like, yeah, I'll get back on a plane and fly out to Edmonton. I haven't been here. I've been to Alberta often enough.
Yes, you have.
But haven't been to Edmonton and meet with this group again. So yeah, it's good to be back.
Well, look, let's welcome the ambassador back to Alberta. I mean, I say this as a setup because if we do a good job here today, maybe we get invited to Boise next year. I was talking with Dave from WSP. He's on the organizing committee. Yeah. I saw him last night and there's a fantastic golf course that you'll really like there in Boise. So I don't
know. Penwar doesn't do golf. They haven't invited me to play golf in Washington. They didn't invite me for golf this time. It's like, so what if Boise has a nice golf course? Penwar may be there, and they probably won't use it.
Okay, so this is a note.
You tell me I got to go a couple days early if I want to play golf.
Okay, all right. Well,
is that right?
Well, we'll figure it all out. I mean, this is a note, a note to self for the organizing committee. I think that The ambassadors.
I understand they're getting a couple of new leaders. You know, this guy from Alberta's not coming, you know, he's not going to be there. Maybe, do you play golf?
Well, I don't call it what I do is golf.
Yeah,
I take a
okay.
nice walk and chase a ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you play golf? Oh, okay. Well, that's why they don't play golf.
Well, we'll figure that out. Now, I want to note, are you wearing the belt buckle today? So we're in Calgary at the Calgary Stampede, okay? And the ambassador goes to the rodeo, and he gets himself a pair of boots, which he's wearing today, and a belt buckle, right? I mean, this belt buckle is like the size of a dinner plate.
Well, I got it from you.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but you know, it's you know, when your belt buckle's that size, you got to be careful how you sit sometimes.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
Gary, I don't have the belt buckle, but I am channeling. I really like channeling my Western feel now. You know, I've never really worn boots before. I wore them for 10 days, wearing them again, coming out here. They're really comfortable. I think I'm going to really like this boot thing.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, we're always looking for things that would make you feel comfortable here in Alberta. Let's talk about that. I mean, you
the
spent
thing I
time.
like about the boots that I'm glad I like wearing them, they weren't cheap. And I'm Dutch. And the last thing I would have wanted was to buy expensive boots and find out they weren't very comfortable.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about being Dutch. I mean, you are very blunt. I mean, look, I've got this article from the Wall Street Journal. And this is from last week. Trump's man in Canada practices no holds barred diplomacy. But let me say this, is that Goldie Hyder of the Business Council of Canada says he's representing the president. He is here to represent the president. And you yourself said, you're not here to be liked. You're here to talk about what we can do together.
I've done a good job at that, too.
Yeah, well, you know, Winston Churchill had this great line that he was referring to somebody that was quite blunt, and he said, here's a guy that's a bull who brings his own china shop with him. I mean, are you kind of like that?
No.
No? No?
I just like to get things done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I actually think that, you know, one of the things that noted in the Wall Street Journal was that you really took on a former Canadian diplomat at an event, and you said, we don't need your oil, we don't need your gas, we don't need your aluminum, your steel.
I think I heard that from the president first.
Well, you did.
Yeah.
You did. And you're carrying the president's messages. But when we got into one of our sessions, you know, you actually talked about what that meant. You said, look, we don't need your oil, we can get it from somewhere else. But there's a reason why Canadian oil has gone from 6% of U.S. oil imports to 60% of U.S. imports. And you said Canada's not the only place we can get our oil from, but it's the best place. And that's the case that Canada has to make in its negotiations. You still stand by that?
Yeah, I think for many of the things that there are things we need. There's lots of things that the U.S. needs. Okay? We want oil. We need oil. And we have found over the last, couple of decades that one of the best places in the world to get oil from is Canada. It's close by. The people that we have to work with in Alberta are great business partners. They're good business people. And, so we settle on a price, and so we get 3 to 4 million barrels of oil per day from Alberta. Works for Canada, works for the United States. We'd like to get another 3 or 4 million barrels of oil over the next decade from somewhere. And probably the region that can make the most compelling case for supplying more oil to the United States would be Saskatchewan and Alberta. And it's kind of like I saw our reaction at the White House on October 7 when the Prime Minister proposed, as part of a preliminary trade agreement, that Canada would be willing to ship 3 to 4 million barrels of oil to the United States, additional barrels of oil to the United States, that Doug Burgum and Secretary Wright had to be restrained by the president because they were so eager for getting more oil and getting it from Canada. And the president had to advise them that crawling across the table and shaking Carney's hand and that type of was not necessarily the best negotiating strategy.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Show a little bit more restraint that we do have options. But I think it shows the same thing. The other one that gets so much attention is autos. And there's different reactions to things that the president says. The president says we don't need your oil. We need oil, but we don't necessarily need it from Canada. You've got a couple of premiers who say, we're going to make this deal with the United States. We want to sell more oil. And the end result is they make the case, the president and his team kind of say, yeah, that's a really good idea that we get another 3 or 4 million barrels from Canada. You have the situation where it is, we don't need your autos, and it's kind of like, okay, we don't need your bourbon. We not only don't need it, we're going to ban it. And we're going to try to get as much of Canada to ban your bourbon as well. Now, I personally think that, and we all know what province we're talking about, I personally think that that province could have made a compelling case as to, see, this is where I'm just blunt, okay?
I'm okay with that.
I know you are, but your media won't be. Ontario could have made a compelling case. I'm from Michigan. We've got an integrated infrastructure ecosystem for autos, which makes getting parts and vehicles from Canada, from Ontario specifically, kind of a natural thing. We've been doing it for a long time. A car, a truck, whatever that comes from Ontario probably has 95% U.S. content. The factories, the workers in the factories get paid roughly the same salaries that people in Michigan do. You have the same environmental standards, so the whole cost structure, production cycle, and all of that is not skewed in favor of one country versus the other. And so we've got mold makers, die makers, that do business. So it's kind of like, you know what? If America needs an extra car that we can't build ourselves, probably the best place to go get that car is from Ontario.
Yep.
But some people take different approaches, and that's what happens in business all the time.
So let's talk about something that you referenced earlier, and that was Secretary Burgum. So, it speaks to the importance of organizations like Penwar that...
Actually, it doesn't. He's not even part of Penwar.
No. But
I know.
in this sense, like Scott Moe had developed a very good relationship with then Governor Doug Burgum, right? I met Doug Burgum because I was at the time the president of the Canadian Petroleum Services Association, and there was this Williston Basin Conference that took place every other year, and it was hosted in Saskatchewan, then it was hosted in North Dakota, and this is where Scott Moe, Premier Moe of Saskatchewan, got to meet Burgum. And I think what Canadian legislators really need to understand is that today's state representative is tomorrow's governor or tomorrow's congressman, and today's congressman becomes governor or maybe a U.S. senator. And this is how these relationships that are built here, when somebody from Trudy, like from, Prince George, meets Dave from Boise, Idaho, and you get all these other people, and, Richard, Gottfried over there will tell you about the kinds of relationships that he's built across the border. I mean, but in Michigan, you've got the Great Lakes group of governors and premiers that meet. In Atlantic Canada, there's the Atlantic governor, or the New England governors meeting with Atlantic premiers. I mean, how important are those relationships between Canada and the United States? It's more than just Ottawa and Washington. It's at the subnational level as well, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, it's nice to know that if you're talking to Scott or if you're talking to Danielle, and you just start saying, hey, you need to get a hold of Doug. It's kind of like, if I need to get a hold of Doug, I can call Doug. All right, I've got his number. Same thing with Wright. Those are very, very powerful and important relationships to have, because the state rep becomes the governor becomes the secretary, and that ends up being awesome as kind of the relationships that the two of you talked about, that you know each other, you've accomplished things together, and the roles of governors and premiers are so similar.
Right.
In that it's kind of like, okay, we got to do everything that we can to create prosperity, jobs, wealth on both sides of the border. And all along this long border, it's exactly what they've been doing for decades. And one, you can make a very successful premier at the same time that you're making a very successful governor. And that's good for the people of those provinces and for those states.
I mean, when I was Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs back in 2005, we were trying to solve bovine spongiform encephalopathy. I spent a lot of time practicing that, so
if you say, I found out that in the Middle East, because I spent a lot of time on national security, when you had these names that were very difficult, you practice them, and then if you say them very, very quickly, nobody can really figure out whether you got it right or not. Ahmadinejad.
Okay.
No, that's hey.
Bovine spongiform encephalopathy.
Yes.
Okay. So here's how it got solved. I mean, Premier Klein from Alberta had spent time with the then governor of, I think it was Nebraska, Governor Johans. Is that right, Richard? Did I get that right? It was Governor Johans, who later became Secretary of Agriculture. And that's ultimately how our issue with cross-border beef got solved, was because of that relationship. And so again, it speaks to the importance. But let me say this. I mean, you said governors and premiers are a lot alike. The one difference, we've got a former lieutenant governor here, that has no equivalent in the United States. Just so you know, Lois Mitchell is completely unique, would not be well known in the United States. But tell me how they're the same. I mean, they run the economies, don't they? Governors and premiers.
No, businesses run the economy.
Okay, all right, I get that.
They create the framework by which entrepreneurs and businesses actually have the opportunity to succeed or not succeed. And the roles and responsibilities, are different, in terms of the scope. But overall, and I find this when I meet with a number of the premiers, is, hey, we want more investment, we want jobs, those types of things. And it's the same, we do a program called Select USA, where we invite countries from around the world and companies from around the world to come to the United States. They go into this massive convention hall, and down in on the convention floor, you've got all 50 states who've got their booths up, right? And the booths are very simple. Here's why you ought to come and invest in Michigan. Here's why you ought to come and invest in Minnesota. These are the incentives that we could provide. This is our tax climate. This is what we'll do for worker training, all of those types of things. And so, and I think, I don't know exactly what the Prime Minister, he's got some kind of investment program that he's scheduling for September. I don't know if they're going to be inviting investors, whether they're going to be inviting the provinces to all make their case as to, here's what you would invest in British Columbia or whatever. But it's the same type of thing. And this is what our president has been doing, is trying to make America the best place for businesses to invest, attracting investment and putting into place tax policy and these kinds of things. And we hope Canada does the same thing. We hope Canada is successful because we believe that having a wealthy partner to the north is a good thing for us.
So that's a great point. So let me say, first of all, I misspoke when I said governors and premiers run they set up the environment for businesses to make the decisions. So let me ask you
I helped you with that.
I
Fix
know,
that.
I know.
Okay.
It's just,
all right.
I'm taking my cues from you, Ambassador. So let's make this a two-part question then. First, as you've spent time in Western Canada, where do you think the greatest opportunities are for Western Canadian businesses to work strategically with American partners? That's question number one. Question number two is this, and it goes to what you just said, that the president actually wants wealthy neighbors. He wants Canada to prosper as well. So I want you to comment on that also.
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to get into what's the best place to do business in Canada. I think Canada has lots of great places where potentially they're open for investment. But those are the climates that created. That's done by Canadian political leaders, and I'm not going to comment on whether I believe one is doing it more effectively than another. I might have views on that, but I'm not going to. That's not my job to talk about that. Okay, you guys make up your minds on where you're going to do it. Well, number one, many of you are public policy leaders, so you're the ones that are shaping the policies. The second thing is the businesses, in Canada and the U.S. will decide where they're going to invest, and those types of things. And for American companies coming into Canada, if they ask me about what's the best place, if they give me some description of their businesses, and they said, hey, where's the best place to invest? I might provide them with some views and those types of things, or at least explain to them what's been going on in those provinces that they ought to be aware of and they ought to factor into their decision making. Okay, so.
But strategically, let's think about the big areas where we could collaborate. Maybe not specific investment ideas, but strategically. I mean, would we think about defense of the North? Would we think about energy? Would we think about critical minerals? Would we think about infrastructure, trade infrastructure? What do you think are the big strategic ideas that we could be focused on?
You can go through them. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities, okay? Alberta just announced the huge data center, right? I think $13 billion potentially coming in for both the construction of the data center, the energy that goes along with it. So obviously, anything that has to do with the tech world, okay? Data centers, data centers, AI require tremendous amounts of energy. So any place that you have energy. But as I talk about this, there's a whole series of current investment areas where we're prospering and we're doing great together, okay? It is autos, okay? It is agriculture. It has been aluminum. It has been steel. It is oil. So those are existing, and I don't think any one of those is really a dying industry. I mean, a lot of folks look at those core industries and say, wow, we're doing really, really well. We could do significantly better in those industries. I tend to agree with that. We're bringing back potentially a couple of industries that, maybe 5-10 years ago, Canada and the U.S. had kind of written off. You go to oh man, now I forget the name of it. What's the big mining conference? PDAC?
PDAC in
The
Toronto.
big mining conference
Yep.
in Toronto. People tell me that a few years ago, it wasn't a very exciting place to be. You could shoot a cannon down the halls because who's investing in mining? You go there this year and you've got 7 organizations from the US government who are there with something that's really important to getting into critical minerals. Money to invest to start up mines. So you say, okay, critical industries is a possible future industry that is a growth industry. Shipbuilding. Okay, Finland, Canada, and the U.S. Reached an agreement to do shipbuilding and build icebreakers in all 3 countries because the Nordic or the Arctic's becoming a more important area. And then you have the emerging industries: space, AI, data, uranium. You say uranium, that's an old industry. It's kind of but now you're talking about SMRs, small modular reactors, and all of these types of things. That's a big investment area. And so you've got a whole new list of new industries that you can go into. I mean, it really should be a very, very exciting time for Canada and America to partner on those kinds of industries if we decide that directionally that's where Canada wants to go, and directionally if that's where America wants to go.
Let's talk about Canadian critical minerals, since you mentioned it. I mean, for most Canadians, what they know about that is 3 things. 1, it's Canadian. 2, it's critical. And 3, they're minerals. But that's really about all. But the United States has been going out, and they've actually been stockpiling some of these critical minerals. And I think of the 37 critical minerals identified by the United States, I think there's 34 of them. Some of them, a lot of them in Western Canada itself. Is this an area where we can help the United States break the supply chain that China's been trying to monopolize on providing stockpiles of critical minerals?
Yeah, I think we got to get a new language. Okay, I don't like the term help. Okay, it's like, is critical minerals, is that an area where we can form a business relationship, a national security relationship of partners and equals? And the answer would be, I think so. Okay, the president and the president's team have made it very, very clear we have needs for critical minerals, national security, economic security reasons. And when the president says we're going to fix something, he puts his team on it. And so 2-3 months ago, we had Secretary Rubio had a conference in Washington, D.C. We invited countries from around the world to come. Canada was included. And at the conclusion of the sessions, we invited countries to sign up and to be partners with us in addressing the needs that we had for critical minerals. And I think initially, almost immediately, we had 17, 19 countries sign up and say, yep, put me down on the list. I want to work with you. It's the same message that we sent at PDAC, where we had the White House, the Energy Department, Department of War, Exim Bank, and a few other agencies, all there ready and willing to strike deals. And I think from our standpoint, one of the disappointing things is Canada didn't sign up for the critical minerals. So what, it's kind of like, we understand no, okay? The president has a lot of business people on his team, in the cabinet. And, they've been in the business world, and I've been in the business world, and we've competed for business. And when a company says no, you go back and it says, okay, can I still change their mind? Or I've got a bunch of folks over here who said yes. Okay, let's focus on them. Let's see where we can move them to. So Canada has not signed up yet, but 2 weeks ago we just signed a massive deal with the Dominican Republic. No, not the Republic of the Congo. Okay, on copper and cobalt. Okay, chalk down, advancing the ball on those two critical minerals. And it was a significant investment, and we've set aside X amount of dollars that we think we need to invest to address our critical minerals problem. That number now is slightly less because we've now committed to some projects already, and fix the problem, reduce the investment dollars come down. The future investment dollars are coming down because they're committed. Some are committed, but I would think it'd be an awesome place for us to do a partnership with.
Just on the subject of copper coming from the DRC, I don't know who the delegates are from Montana, but I've been to the Anaconda mine site. It's amazing. This is the biggest hole that you've ever seen, Ambassador. It's they say that this one mine basically electrified America with the amount of copper that's in it, and there remain a lot of copper deposits in the that are in the western states and in Western Canada as well. So this is a huge opportunity for copper, I think. But here's an example of a critical mineral that's really essential: germanium, and it's got nothing to do with the flowers. Geraniums. Germanium is used in the making of fiber optic cable, and these fiber optic cables are what the Ukrainians are using to make their drones, because they don't use radio frequency to control some of these drones. They use long filaments of fiber optic cable, and that way they can't be interfered with by Russian efforts to change the signals. You probably get this kind of briefing stuff from in your capacity as ambassador. You get briefing of stuff that I would never get. But this germanium is about 60% of it is controlled by the supply chains in China. The good news is the number 4 largest producer of germanium in the world is Teck Resources out of Vancouver. And so this is something that would be really important for us if Canadians were to help Ukrainians in their efforts to try and defend themselves against the Russian Federation. Providing germanium would be a really important idea so that they can produce the fiber optic cable that is changing the nature of kinetic warfare in that theater.
Right. Yep.
So, and let's talk also about, since you raised the issue of trade, or no, maybe it wasn't you. I see it's a question here that came in on HOVA, and it's about the USMCA or CUSMA, depending on which side of the border you're on. I mean, you had told me earlier at one of our previous events that you were optimistic that there was going to be a free trade agreement between Canada and the United States. There's some uncertainty now, but you believe that it's in the best interest of both countries to come to an agreement. And we could either, as in your words, we could do it the easy way or we could do it the hard way. It appears that we're trying to do it the hard way, but nonetheless, you're optimistic that we're going to have a deal at some point.
Yeah, we're going to end up with a deal between 2 large trading partners. I have, at this point in time, the president and his team have clearly indicated that they don't see it in the best interest to extend USMCA. They're continuing to have discussions, and we'll see where they end up. But there has to be some framework of an agreement, and the president will decide whether it's going to be 10 one-year reviews or whatever. But the 10 one-year reviews, I don't think is an optimal solution, in that we've seen uncertainty in investments for the last 13, 15 months already. And it's where the investment's going to be made. Are they going to be made on the north side of the border or on the south side of the border? Indications are, with this level of uncertainty, more of those investments are finding their way, I believe, in the numbers that I've seen, are finding their way south of the border. And so, I think to get rid of that uncertainty, but that's a question that the president and his negotiating team are now going to have to answer. And we're working through that. This week we've got the third round of in-depth negotiations with Mexico. And one of the things that will come out of that is they already have an agreement, because there's so much work that needs to be done in getting to an agreement that can be signed, is that they'll have additional meetings in August. And I'm not sure exactly how long that's going to take, but they're knocking down the issues with Mexico, and so that's going down one path, and the discussions and negotiations with Canada are at a different point.
So there's kind of two sets of negotiations going on. One is on CUSMA USMCA. That's all the stuff that is tariff-free. But then there's the sectoral negotiations on things like aluminum, steel, softwood lumber. And we have a question here about softwood lumber. Is the pattern going to be the same as what happened last time? Is Mexico going to get a deal, and then that'll be the template for the solution for Canada to ultimately sign a deal with the United States as well on these areas?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, let's talk about softwood lumber since the question was raised. This is a big issue in the province of British Columbia. And I mean, for years, I can remember negotiating softwood lumber back in 2005 in my capacity as a minister of the Crown, and this has been a long-standing issue. I mean, the reality is about 25% of the softwood lumber in the United States comes from Canada. And I had mentioned this the last time we met, that, as an example, the Charmin, which is the softest toilet paper available in the United States, is made with pulp that comes from long fibered pulp that comes from Alberta and Quebec, and that's what's used for making Charmin. And so if the president would take the tariffs off that, he would surely be thanked by end users, right? And they would thank him from the heart of their bottoms. I mean, I think this would be a really good idea.
There seems to be some kind of fixation on that part of the body today, but that I am not. We'll just have to wait and see exactly. When they may have to just call you out of retirement, because when I got this job and I talked to former American ambassadors to Canada, the one consistent piece of advice I got was, Pete, stay away from softwood lumber.
So
it is just
it's a hard one to deal with.
That's why they need to bring you back.
So that we can have a lighter treatment of the subject?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you said you've solved it before, and you're an expert in the uses of long fiber, short fiber, and those types of things. So you speak with a whole degree of expertise that I just don't have. Okay. But in all seriousness, okay, I had a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law that lived in Smithers, and he worked at the particle board plant in Smithers, and we visited there, and I understand the seriousness of the problem, and that it's a serious issue affecting the lives and businesses on both sides of the border, but especially the people that are harvesting the lumber and processing it into sawdust, into particle board, into long fibers and short fibers, and those types of things. I would love to be optimistic and say, but this is the tough one. So.
Let's talk about trade infrastructure. Trade infrastructure is really important for all of us in the Pacific Northwest and Western Canada, and for for Alaska, for the Northwest Territories, for the Yukon Territory. I mean, if we were to take a map, and this goes to, somebody raised the issue of short rail lines in British Columbia. If we were to take a map of natural resources across the entire region, and then laid on top of that a map of where the infrastructure is, we'd find that sometimes there isn't a matchup of where resources are and where the transportation links are. I mean, are there areas where the United States and Canada could be coordinating on making sure that trade infrastructure matches up? Because the resources, if you can't move it, you can't sell it. So is that something that that the U.S. and Canada could be coordinating on as a strategic area of increasing both of our economic opportunities on either side of the border?
Infrastructure is expensive.
Yeah.
Okay. And just about everywhere I go in Canada, you don't have enough of it just to move vehicles and trucks and buses and those kinds of things, which is no different than the U.S. Okay? So it's like, it's really expensive. Once you build it, it's expensive to maintain, but you really need it. So in those areas where, where we can coordinate on infrastructure to get, our critical needs from one country to the next, obviously it would be a huge advantage to coordinate where and what infrastructure we're going to build. Okay? You've got lots of talk about pipelines. Okay? And it's like, well, let's make sure that we do those things as much jointly as we can. All right, I can only get in trouble, okay? Because
you're among friends here. You're among friends here.
We found that out last time. But I mean, it's, build infrastructure smartly. Okay,
Yep.
There's certain places where it's smart to build pipelines, and there's maybe some places where, especially when you've got pipelines already, it's okay. Go on.
Well, okay, let's talk about pipelines.
Yeah.
So you've got South Bow on the Canadian side of the border that is essentially got all of the permits and a lot of the infrastructure, and the pipe is already in the ground, and moving oil from Hardisty to the U.S. border. They're ready to do that. On the U.S. side, Bridger is talking about putting together the pipeline on the southern side of the border from the U.S. border to Steel City. Yep. So I was with the embassy in Washington at the time, where we were advocating for the presidential permit, which everybody agreed to, except the president. I mean, the Department of Energy was in support, Department of Defense, now the Department of War, was in support, the Secretary of State and the State Department was on board, everybody except for President Obama. So would we get a presidential permit out of this president to complete that line if you wanted to move more oil into PAD Region 2?
I think the president has indicated or has already signed expedited permitting for Bridger. Okay. I mean, so I'm optimistic that the pipe coming down south, the pipe going north, that they're going to meet at the border, that they're going to be at the same place, and then I don't know whether we have all the agreements in place that ensure that for the oil to be produced in Alberta, that there is a willing buyer on the south side to buy it. But hopefully that those agreements are put in place, relatively quickly.
You know, there's a clock in front of us here. It says we've got an hour and 10 seconds, 9 seconds, 8, or a minute and 6, 5, 4. It's kind of like being Jack Bauer from 24. We got, you know, we got like now 59 seconds to disarm this bomb. But here's
we got something important to do before we finish.
Well, we got something very important to do, and I see that the staff is bringing. We kind of started something in Regina, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, and well, tell us about that.
Well, the minister of fun for Saskatchewan was at a conference that I attended because he takes care of gaming, alcohol, and I don't know what, he had a third too. I don't know if it's sports or whatever, but he called himself the Minister of Fun, and he also is the Minister of Economic Development. And he spoke before I did. And I didn't think he was very fun. All right? Okay? He was a great guy. He and I sat next to each other for breakfast. But, you know, he was spot on. I mean, he's the Minister of Fun, and that was about 30 seconds of his presentation, and then, you know, 30 minutes of here's what we're doing on economic development. Again, because provinces are responsible for creating prosperity and jobs, not fun. And I spoke directly after him, and so when I got done, I invited the Minister of Fun to join me, and I reminded him he was not much fun. And so then I said, but we're going to have fun as we leave. So at 9:30 in the morning in Regina, we had, 150, 200 of us? We had 150 of us have a shot of bourbon or whiskey. I guess you're all getting whiskey this morning.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry to the folks over there that I got this podium in the way.
This is a hell of a way to start the morning, Ambassador.
Right? It was one of the best days I had in a long time. But so the Minister of Fun and I toasted to a long and prosperous relationship between the United States and Canada, another 100 and some years of friendship. And I asked, you said it was going to be a splash, okay?
This ain't no splash.
This ain't no splash. But as soon as everybody has some whiskey, how many, are we still waiting for more? Yes, these tables up front here don't have any.
I want to see the Lieutenant Governor, former Lieutenant Governor, get sloshed before 10 o'clock in the morning.
But,
I know that Scott Wenger will take care of her if she gets hammered, right?
So, we thought the Minister of Fun, and I really do like him, don't get me into trouble with him, we thought, there we go, okay, all right. So, I would guess we got to stand and toast, right? Does everybody have some now? No, we got a few more to go. Okay, one last question.
One last question. All right. Look, what advice would you give if Marc-Andre Blanchard, the Prime Minister of Canada's Chief of Staff, if he were sitting in this chair right here, what advice would you give to him on the ongoing nature of the relationship and how we can improve things? What would you say to Marc-Andre?
Marc-Andre is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. He and I talk regularly. I think the other day I talked to him 3 times in one day. What I advise Mark, and I think he advises me as well, is let's take what we're doing each and every day and recognize that. I mean, today we'll do $2.5 billion worth of trade across the border.
Sorry, is that USD or CAD? Just I'm catching.
Aren't they about the same?
Don't I wish? Don't I wish?
It's
USD.
Yeah. So $2.5 billion worth of trade. On Friday, I will be with Dominic and with Mark Wiseman. We're opening a bridge. Okay, so on Monday or Friday we're opening a bridge which shows the collaboration between the two countries and the trade. Yesterday, Canada announced that they are mirroring the U.S. Travel restrictions on folks coming from 3 countries in Africa where there's an Ebola breakout. What people were doing coming from those countries is because we had restrictions saying you can't come into the United States, what they were doing is they were going to Europe and then they would break their travel record, so it'd be harder to track them, and then they'd fly into Canada, cross the border, and they were in the U.S. because we were saying if you've been in one of these 3 countries, you can't come into the U.S. you can't travel to the U.S. for 21 days until, that's your quarantine period. And Canada had some provisions in place, but they weren't mirrored. Okay, yesterday we announced that our restrictions now mirror each other. Okay, chalk one up for cooperation. And then this morning I saw that I always thought NORAD was West Coast, Arctic, and that was it. And then yesterday I saw that there were some folks, again, not smart folks, who decided that maybe they were going to fly their planes through the secure area around the FIFA final. And NORAD scrambled fighters to intercept these planes and kind of guide them to the right place. So these kinds of cooperative things go on each and every day. I think it's our responsibility. I think it's your responsibility. If you want to get to a deal, which I think most of us want to get to, if you want to get to an agreement and some certainty, I have a problem, and I think that Canadians don't think very highly of the United States right now. It makes it harder for politicians to get to an agreement. I think, again, you decide what you want to do, but I think it would be helpful if we had 300-400 people leave here, both sides of the border, talking about how important this trade relationship is to national security, economic security, and personal security, that this relationship is so critical. We need to grow it, and we need to stabilize it, and the future will be very, very bright for all of us.
Hear, hear.
And with that, do I have to help you up?
Yeah.
God. All right.
You know what? I don't even drink, but I'll drink for my country.
You'll drink for your country. To U.S.-Canadian friendship, partnership, and success. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Ambassador. That was a ton of fun, as always.
Just 1 second here. Since we're in the vein and the spirit of cooperation, I've got something for the ambassador. Gary, I'll catch up with you later. But we've got a mutual friend. His name is Senator Roger Victory. And Senator Victory came up here and he did a tour a few years back, and I gave him a painting from my constituency. It was Tammy is her name. She studied with Robert Bateman. I took pictures from my aircraft, and Tammy did the artistic thing. And I understand, Senator, when you were signing your papers from President Trump, that your wife had noticed this picture of these Canadian geese up in his office. Well, that was from my constituency. So what I did was I had another print, and it's called Here in God's Country. And it's all about that cooperation, about reaching further than our own areas, doing that. We've got a limited print here for you of exactly a picture of Here in God's Country.
All right.
So got that for you. Now, there was a saying back in the day that the energy sector was built on diesel fuel and whiskey. I don't know if that was true, but we also have some of the world's finest whiskey, because this is award-winning whiskey over in Europe. They invited this little Anoka distillery that's in my area, in this constituency here, sir, and they won international awards for best young whiskey. So this is, we can't call it Scotch, but we can call it Alberta whiskey, and it's also aptly named Progress Report. So I think that we should make this a tradition, Penmore or otherwise, whether the ambassador's here or not, that we touch in, have a little progress report, have a little shot of whiskey just to set things straight. And this is for a keepsake for you to take away as well, sir.
Here, here.
All right. Thank you.